Welcome to episode 4 of the Finsbury Associate podcast. We are here with Mike Fannin, one of the founders of Carrick Wealth from South Africa. And we are here today to talk about everything South Africa. Welcome, Mike.
Cheers, Greg. Thanks very much for having me.
How have you enjoyed your time in Dubai so far?
It's been an experience. It's my first time. Literally, I feel like a very small worm in a very big hook. It's very exciting. The opportunity here is amazing, though. It really, really is. I've just never seen anything like it. There's a lot of energy, a lot of vibe, a lot of people doing some really exciting things. So, yeah, it's been good to be here.
Slightly different pace to South Africa.
Yeah, to an extent. I think the thing is here is that everybody's there's just growth happening nonstop. When things are growing, there's changing. It's dynamic. So, when that's happening all around you, you can't help but be constantly moving forward, constantly expanding yourself, constantly learning, changing. Because, that's what the city just seems to be about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're here to talk about everything South Africa.
Yeah.
Just before we kick off with that, though, why don't you just, for those people listening, just give them a little bit of your background, let them know what you're about, where you're from.
Yeah, okay. So I'm South African, you might have guessed.
Yep.
But I've been in financial services for 20 years, specifically looking at the question of offshore investing for South Africans. I've done that. I had 12 years in London, where I had my own firm there. I'm exiting that, moved back to South Africa, and we opened up Carrick Wealth. Carrick Wealth is the fastest growing financial advisory business in Africa, with offices now throughout South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Mauritius, Malawi, and hopefully a few more to come. So that's what we do. We specialize in helping people with the offshore investment question, which encompasses tax planning, investment, risk, the whole trip, yeah.
Okay, now I've just moved back from South Africa myself. So let's just start talking about South Africa. What's going on in the markets there at the moment? Let's look at it from a property angle, from an equities perspective. What's actually happening on the ground at the moment?
I think at the moment, on the ground at the moment, there's just a lot of uncertainty. We're a country that has the potential to do so well, but people are sitting back and waiting because nobody's quite sure what's going to happen. We had what has been called the 12 lost years due to some questionable, shall we say, leadership. That has all changed now, but there's a lot of rhetoric going around about what's going to happen in terms of changing stuff, but nothing's actually happened yet. So the problem you've got is you have a country where, the great thing about it is we know the potential is there. Over those last 12 years, it's an untold amount of money that was misappropriated, billions and billions and billions, and yet we still managed, on average, a 1% positive growth. So if you inject that back in, we're off to the races. But nothing's happening, nothing's changing. There's questions around this land redistribution. There's questions about what's going to happen to these massive state companies that are failing. How are we going to fund those? There's questions as to how are we going to start igniting growth. So until that happens, until that changes, people are going to be nervous about investing large amounts of money and growing the country. In the stock market, you're dominated by Naspers, which is primarily a holding in Tencent, the Chinese company. And as a result of that, they control around 20% of the South African stock exchange. So you're getting almost to a situation like you have with Gazprom in Russia, where the exchange is moved by only one stock. And as a result of that, then investment becomes difficult. It becomes difficult to differentiate in terms of building a strategy that's different from everybody else's, that does something different. So again, you sit back and you wait. You wait for something to happen, wait for something to change. But until people start investing, new businesses start coming in, new companies start opening, I think it's going to keep treading water the way it is at the moment.
Okay, and over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, exchange control has changed massively in South Africa. People are now afforded the opportunity to transfer more money out of South Africa than they ever have done previously. Yeah, people taking advantage of this, right?
Yes, completely. People are moving a large amount of money out. There's obviously okay, let me rewind. The thing about it is that for many years, South Africans were told foreign investment and offshore investment, shall we say, was a bad thing. It was a dirty word, something you didn't do. So while there is large amounts of money moving out, you would think that in a normal economy, asset diversification in terms of geography and currency is a normal occurrence. So are we really moving that much out, or are we just balancing what should have happened over many, many years? It's a catch-up phase. So I don't know if it's actually crippling the country as such. People are internationalizing. They are diversifying. Are they taking absolutely everything? No. I have numerous clients out there who still have large holdings in terms of properties or companies. They're not selling them up.
Yep.
They're taking that excess cash and diversifying it. South Africa is 0.4% of global financial market. You would not put all your eggs in that basket. So I think what they're doing is just spreading it out, getting less risk on board, and hedging their bets a little bit.
Yeah, I remember reading a stat. I think at one point, if you looked at the sort of UK economy, about 50 to 60% of Brits had wealth overseas, and in South Africa, it's only about 6%.
Exactly. So while it feels like a mad rush, it's if you roll back just 20 years ago, the maximum investment a South African would make was £40,000 in their entire lifetime. Okay, so with that kind of stifling going on, there's bound to be some catch up when the gates release.
Do you think there is a danger, though, at some stage of government going, hey, the outflows are now getting to the point where we do need to rein it in a little bit, maybe dropping the amount people can transfer or closing the door altogether? Do you think that's a concern for people?
The only time that happens is when you start to move towards, well, I believe, the only time that happens when you move towards the sort of the failed African state scenario, the situation where Zimbabwe has, where they've literally run out of dollars.
Yeah.
And that happens when nobody's investing anymore.
Yeah.
People are simply, and that hasn't happened in South Africa yet. Okay. For our government's purposes, offshore investment is fantastic because since the Common Reporting Standard come in, they're aware of this money. That means South Africans are earning interest and returns in hard currency that they can then tax. And we need the tax revenue.
Yeah.
So I don't think it wasn't just them being nice saying we'll allow offshore exchange. It allows them to actually earn a bit more money.
Okay.
So I again, that sort of nightmare scenario of everything, it's not where I see South Africa going. I don't believe that we'll head that way. I think we've got some problems coming up, but I don't think we go that failed African state route where suddenly we run out of dollars and we start running out of basic foodstuffs and things.
Yeah, not at the realms of possibility, but
no.
So
it's interesting. There's a famous South African speaker, Clem Sunter, and I think he always puts what he calls flags into his future planning scenarios. And the scenario of failed state, I think he still assigns, only a 10% possibility to. Yes, it's there. We can't ignore it. But I believe that we will move more towards, some of your South American economies, places like Venezuela, hopefully without all of the unrest that sometimes happens there. Yeah. But not necessarily failed, but sort of a second-rate economy that kind of bumbles along. But again, we have the potential, like I say, to do so much. If half of that capital that got stolen came back, or if just going forward they just stole less, I think it's an amazing opportunity for a country.
Yeah.
But while people are sitting in their hands, nothing's really going to happen.
Okay, so with all the uncertainty over the sort of last 10, 15, 20 years, obviously that has seen a huge shift in sort of experienced professional South Africans leaving South Africa, taking up positions in Middle East, Dubai, UAE, for example. A lot of talk at the moment around international tax, problems that these guys are going to face. Is it scaremongering? Should they be worried? What's the reality? What's the message to these guys living and ladies living here in the UAE?
Okay, it's quite a complex question. I think the first thing is the question is, why did people leave? Now, South Africa has had affirmative action going for quite a while. So for certain classifications of the population, it was hard for them to find employment. So, young people went overseas to work for a period to get themselves established. So the first thing you want to be asking yourself is, and it's like financial advice, there's no one right answer. Okay, you've got to be looking at what are you trying to achieve. Are you here to earn some money over the next 3 to 5 years so you can set yourself up and then go back? Are you looking to come here and establish a long-term life and set up a family, and this is where you want to be for good? So that's the first question you want to be asking. Within that, though, South Africa has recognized that a lot of people are what they call temporary non-residents, shall we say. They're traveling out, they're working somewhere, earning money, but the place that they're working in, they don't have permanent right of abode.
Yeah.
So the
Which
tax
definitely
law
applies to the UAE in a lot of cases.
Completely.
Yeah.
And I believe that the tax law change that's coming in March, I believe is targeted specifically at places like Dubai. I think it's one of the few places where people are going and working without the right for permanent abode. And the South Africans are saying, well, if you went there, but you can't stay there, well, you're not really no longer tax resident, are you? You're actually tax resident here, and we'd like a slice of that. Just as an aside, this is not unusual. Okay, the Americans have been doing it for years. The Americans have been taxing their citizens globally, no matter where they lived and what they did, saying, well, you're American, we'll tax you. That's where FATCA was born out of. So it's not an unusual thing, and I think you'll see more and more of this happening in governments and tax jurisdictions around the world. The common theme we have around the world is that governments need money. They're all broke. 2008, I think, bailing out companies that had gone to the wall basically with money that they didn't have. And the bill hasn't come yet. We haven't paid that. So around the world, people are looking to raise cash. So you'll see more aggressive tax laws changing like this. Having said that, there's always ways to plan for them. But the planning has to be done on the basis of what is your individual circumstance, what are you trying to achieve, and then building a solution that fits you specifically.
Comparative to America, though, I mean, I think a lot of Americans that are living abroad, it's not necessarily because they couldn't get work in America. It's because either they like to go and live in the UK or they quite fancied some time in Europe. With South Africans, it's probably the case, actually, though, that from a job perspective, they just didn't have that opportunity in South Africa.
I think for a long time it was that, and it has been that. I think it's changing to an extent, but jobs are tight everywhere. Unemployment worldwide is a big problem. Now the guys that are here, I think it definitely is a place where you can get a lot of work, you can earn a lot of money, although it's hellishly expensive. I can't believe how much stuff costs. I think I paid the equivalent of 400 Rand for a toasted sandwich. I nearly cried, but that's what they're out there looking for. They're looking for these solutions, but this isn't the only place. And I think if you've got a place where I think the question that's going to come down is if you want to stay on a non-permanent basis in a place for the purpose of earning money, you've got to start picking where you're going to do it. And for certain people, specifically in certain income categories, Dubai may no longer be it.
Okay, so let's just look at a worst case scenario for a second. So I'm a South African, I'm living here in Dubai. Currently, I'm enjoying a tax-free lifestyle. 2020, what's my worst case scenario in terms of how my income's going to get affected?
Well, the South Africans are saying that anything over your first R1 million, tax-free, that's fine. You can keep on paying. Anything over that, you're going to be hit at 45%.
Which is about what, $50,000?
Yeah, about that. $60,000 probably about. Yeah. Anything above that, they're going to tax according to your marginal tax rate, which will probably put you in the 40%.